Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Well, thanks for having me, Jared. Really excited to be with you all at the Profitable Regeneration Summit. I'm really glad also that you structured the seminar this way because, truly no one can remain regenerative for long if they're not profitable. So understanding the business side of ranching is really essential for any producer. I kind of like to picture successful ranching as really mastering the three corners of a triangle, or you might envision it as the three legs of a stool, but there's the livestock management aspect, there's the grazing management, there's also business management. And failure in any one area can cause collapse of the whole. And I think arguably the area most people commonly struggle with is the business side, and that's kind of what we're going to focus on here. Many people can raise a calf, but most struggle to make a living. And so the business side is important. Planning is really important. And so that kind of brings us to the next step, which is, the three-step approach for planning to profit. We need to see, number one, the big picture. And then secondly, we need to be able to assess our situation. That includes breaking the ranch business down into its component parts. And then we need to be able to develop a plan. So first, you have to see the big picture. That's hard to do. This also means being able to see and think forward and not backward, to be able to answer just basic questions like, what's going to happen if I do this, or what will happen if I do that? And ultimately, to be able to confidently answer the question, what should I do now? Because that's all that really matters when you're planning your business. You're trying to decide, what should I do now? And that really kind of is my problem that I see with all historical record-keeping tools. The main problem is that they don't really answer this question of what I should do now. At best, they simply allow me to look backward, but not forward, and I need to see forward in order to know what I should do. So that's number one. Number two, you need to be able to assess your business situation, and that requires you to break it down into its component parts. And like Jared mentioned, that's the practice of enterprise analysis. Enterprise analysis is essential because ranch businesses tend to be an accumulation of multiple different profit centers that we call enterprises. So each enterprise operates at least somewhat independently of the other enterprises, and it's essential to separate them out and not simply lump them all together in your ranch businesses, because some of those enterprises might be profitable and others might not be. And if you don't separate them out, you're likely to make money in one area, but then to lose it in other areas. So you have to separate them out and assess them individually. And then that brings us to step number three, and that's to then develop and implement a plan. Once you've seen the big picture, you've assessed your current situation, then you can truly make sense of your ranch business and develop a rational plan forward for maximal ranch profitability. And yeah, that's what Ranch Vision is designed to do. It's designed to do all that, to show you the big picture moving forward. It automatically performs enterprise analysis for you. You don't have to do that. It does it for you. It breaks your ranch down into its individual components, and then it allows you to manage forward in an interactive way, to anticipate problems, to take advantage of opportunities, and then finally to identify the most profitable plan for your ranch business. I want to speak a little more about enterprise analysis. I think this is important to really understand before we move on. So yeah, with enterprise analysis, we break up the ranch into those profit centers, those enterprises, and examine each one independently to identify its own unique contribution to overall ranch profit. And that requires us to identify our costs as either overhead costs or direct costs. Fairly simple. Overhead costs are those that don't change with levels of production. Direct costs are those that do. So there's some costs, overhead costs, that are going to remain, fixed no matter what your production level is. Some of those in a grazing livestock operation, they're going to be your insurance, your taxes, your utilities, your depreciation, wages, repairs, things like that. those things don't really change. So once we've separated out those overhead and direct costs, oh yeah, direct costs. So direct costs are those costs that do vary with the level of production. So for example, in a cow-calf enterprise, the more cows you have, the more your feed costs are, the more your grazing costs are, the more your veterinary, pharmaceutical, supplements, shipping, all those kinds of costs. Those are all direct costs that vary with the level of production. More production, the more cost. The less production, the less cost. And so once we've separated those out, we do enterprise analysis by simply subtracting the direct costs that are associated with an enterprise from the value of what has been produced by that enterprise. And the difference is called the gross margin. That's an important term, the gross margin. Each enterprise has a specific gross margin, and that's that enterprise's contribution to overall ranch profit. So as you can see here on this slide, you know, there's different enterprises. There's a cow-calf enterprise. There's a hay enterprise. Looks like maybe a feedlot, some sheep enterprises, maybe a direct-to-market enterprise. Each one of them is making its own unique contribution to ranch profit. We can see that the cow-calf enterprise has a gross margin of $240,460 after you separate out those costs, the $102,980 direct costs, from the value of what's been produced, the gross product of $342,980. So that enterprise has a gross margin. Each of these other enterprises also have a gross margin. And that kind of brings us to a very simple ranch profit equation. This is fairly straightforward. So this is how you calculate the profit on the ranch. The gross margin for each of your enterprises added together, subtracting then the overhead costs, and that's what your profit is. Gross margins for all of your enterprises added together, and then you subtract the overhead costs, that's your profit. And once you understand the ranch profit equation, then we can quickly realize and understand that there's really only 5 ways to increase ranch profit, 5 fundamental ways. We can see that you can do that by, one of these ways, by decreasing your overheads, by adding a non-competing enterprise, by increasing enterprise efficiency, a very important term we'll get to, by reallocating your limited resources, or by further developing your resources. So let's kind of go through them one at a time. First, we can increase our profit by decreasing our overheads. This is important to know. You need to consider your overheads as necessary evils, and to the degree you can reduce them, you should, because every dollar that you decrease in overheads, you increase your profit a corresponding dollar. The next thing that we can do, number 2, is to add a non-competing enterprise. What's a non-competing enterprise? That's an enterprise that doesn't require the resources that are used by your existing ranch enterprises. So in other words, the existing ranch infrastructure might allow you to do certain things that could also produce an income, could also produce a gross margin without really impacting what you're already doing. And so if you were to add another enterprise, then that's also, if that has a positive gross margin, that's going to increase your profit by that much. Number 3 is to increase enterprise efficiency. Enterprise efficiency is really important, and what it means, it is measured as the gross margin produced per unit of resource consumed. The gross margin produced per unit of resource consumed. And so what it's doing, it's measuring how efficiently a particular enterprise converts resources into return. And that's really important. And in fact, that's how you can compare enterprises that use the same resources. Which one does it more efficiently? So it answers the question, how much is this enterprise going to return? How much is it going to give per unit of resource used? For grazing enterprises, which most ranches are going to have probably at least one grazing enterprise, it's measured as the amount of gross margin per unit of grass consumed. Ranchers are ultimately grass farmers trying to convert that grass resource into profit, into gross margin. So the efficiency for grazing enterprises is how much gross margin per same unit of grass consumed. So that's the ultimate key performance indicator for grazing enterprises. So you can see if we increase the efficiency of an enterprise, then for that same amount of resources used, we're going to increase that enterprise's gross margin, and thus we're going to increase overall ranch profit. The next one is to reallocate limited resources, and this is often a big one. It's a very important area for increasing ranch profit. But because we have finite resources, we can also increase profit by taking resources away from inefficient enterprises and then moving them towards the more efficient enterprises. And then the last one, we can simply further develop our resources. We can create more resources. You know, if it's a grazing enterprise, if we're talking about the grazing resource, it's ways to increase your forage or your grass. And if you can do that, then you can increase your profit because you can expand your enterprises. Some of the ways to do that, some of the ways to increase your grazing resources are things such as better pasture management, irrigation, seeding, virtual fencing, fertilization. That's one way to increase pasture, you know, to improve your pasture management. But another way is simply to acquire more pasture, either through a lease or through a purchase. So those are the 5 steps of the ranch profit roadmap. And it's important to understand those and to be familiar with them because, like we talked about, fundamentally, those are the only ways to increase ranch profitability. And so maybe now we'll go to the program, and Michaela will open the program and look at ways to put this into action. So here's the program. This is basically the dashboard. This is what you're going to see. We have a sample ranch already inputted. And Michaela, if you could maybe select some reports, and this is how you do that. You just click on them and they will appear behind you. But like we talked about, this is the big picture. The program is looking forward. You're seeing in the months and years ahead, up to 5 years into the future, what's going to happen based on what this producer is doing. And also here, the ranch business, you know, the business is seen in total. It's also broken down into its component enterprises. Each and every one of these reports, and I think Michaela, you know, brought up maybe a third or so of them, but each of these reports is going to show you a different aspect of the ranch business moving ahead. It's showing you what will happen if what you say is true. It's also interactive because as you change any of these variables, you change what you plan to do, immediately all these reports are updated to that new situation. So just looking at some of these reports, you can see your herd numbers, what's going to happen with herd numbers in years 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 based on this current plan. You can see your annual purchases, your monthly outflow, cash outflow over the next 12 months for livestock purchases, your sales inflow for the next 12 months, breakdown of sales. We see your grazing demands. The program is automatically calculating how much of the forage resource your animals are going to be consuming for the next 12 months. You see your sales. Here's your gross margins for your cattle enterprises. You see we have 6 different cattle enterprises on this ranch. We see the overall contribution to profit for each one of those. The expectation, year 1 for the cow-calf enterprise is going to return a little over, you know, $111,600. Year 2, it's a little different. You can see the retained heifer stockers, retained steer stockers, acquired stockers, each amount. These are the contributions to profit. We see acquired stocker 3 is actually losing money. It's wasting your grass. It's using grass and actually losing money. Also, we can see, you know, the enterprise efficiency report. So again, this is an important measure. How much return, and you can see that there can be tremendous variability, tremendous differences in what's happening here. The cow-calf enterprise is returning over, you know, nearly $103 per unit of grass consumed, whereas those retained heifer stockers are only going to return just over $21 for that same amount of grass consumed. The acquired stocker 3 are losing almost $6 while consuming that same amount of grass. So that here we can compare all these different enterprises. You can also see the sheep enterprises. They also have a return. And again, we can compare apples to apples. For that same amount of grass, the ewe lamb enterprise is going to return, $88.69. The ewe feeders, $12. The weather feeders, $11. Same for goats, if you similar thing you could look at. Shows you a lot of other things. It shows you the replacement costs. It's calculating for you what it costs for this producer, all costs incorporated, cash costs, non-cash costs, opportunity costs, with adjustments for death loss, infertility, incorporating bull costs, everything. For this producer to produce a 2-month bred female, it's costing him $3,186.92. That's important to know as you make decisions moving forward. That's just one report. Cattle break-evens, all your break-even purchase price, sales prices, profit and loss, annual as well as yearly. We can see this ranch in year 1 is projected to have overall big picture ranch profit of just over $68,000 in year 1, a little more in year 2, 83, going down to 70,000, almost 71,000 in year 5. Okay. Cash flow, we can look at annual cash flow as well. There's a lot of different things that this program shows, that the reports show you. Again, just different aspects of the ranch business moving forward. But we have a sample ranch put in here. We're going to go ahead and apply those, the ranch profit roadmap principles to see what we can do to change the profits picture for this ranch. You don't have to do all of these or do them in any particular order, but again, these are the various ways that you can increase ranch profit, and we'll just go through an example of each. So going through number 1, first you can decrease overheads. How might you decrease overheads? Yeah, by the way, Michaela's creating a scenario B, and this is a feature for the program. We can go ahead and create a new scenario that you can then compare to your previous ranch plan, your current plan. So it instantly populates a new ranch with that current plan, and now we can make changes to what we were doing and then compare them back to what we were doing before. So let's look at reducing overheads on number 1. One of the things we noticed on this ranch, there's a plan to purchase a pickup this year, a new pickup. It's going to be $85,500. The manager, thinks he can maybe wait on that a little bit. So we just, instead of doing it in year 1, let's just plan on doing that in year 5. Not useful life. Yeah, year to be purchased. We'll purchase it in year 5 instead of year 1. That's going to decrease our depreciation costs. Okay, so that's implemented. Let's look at our comparison of our profit and loss, and you see that almost $7,000 change in depreciation is reflected here in our new profit plan. One of the other things that on this ranch, and again, there's lots of things you can look at, but to use a couple examples here, we talked about decreasing his labor costs, his wages costs, in additional costs and income. He's hired a couple guys. He has one older worker who'd be happy to go to half days. He could do that and save a bit. That would decrease his cost by about $23,500. So just make that change to cash overheads, $23,500, and implement that change. And again, we see the branch profit increased accordingly. Again, remember, every dollar of overheads that you can eliminate is a corresponding dollar of increased profit. So now from 68 to 98,000, that's a $30,000 increase in profit, about a 40% increase just by, going through this first step here. So let's move on to the second potential way to increase profit, and that's to add a non-competing enterprise. And again, This is an enterprise that doesn't compete for the resources that are being used by the existing enterprises. So just alternative things that can be done that really don't impact the things that we're doing now. So examples, and this is kind of only limited by your imagination, but you could have a hunting club, you could add pigs, you could add honeybees, you could add equestrian boarding, a pumpkin patch, solar or wind farm. You could add a hay enterprise. On this ranch has the ability to have a wedding venue. They have a picturesque area with a facility there that they could easily do like 4 events or so, they think, during the spring and summer, clearing about $11,000 each. That would be an additional enterprise that they could add. So if we go to other ranch enterprises and simply add that amount, the gross product of $58,000, the anticipated cash direct costs of $14,000 each year, that would add a new enterprise. And now let's go ahead and save that when you're done. Compare the new profit picture. And we see a big difference. So 156,000 from 68, that's 250% increase in profit in year 1. Big difference. Okay, let's continue on to the third one, and this is again to increase enterprise efficiency. Go back to that enterprise efficiency report. So really, there's again unlimited things that you can do here to potentially increase your enterprise efficiency, and it's specific for every ranch business. Really limited only by your imagination and creativity, but this is how you can quickly assess a cost-benefit analysis for any proposed management change to your enterprises, and you can instantly see how this might work out for you in your unique situation, which is different than the guy across the road or anyone else. How would this change impact my ranch business? So if we look at this ranch, we see, one of our better enterprises is that acquired Stalker 1 enterprise. That's fairly promising. We kind of had an idea to maybe make a change. So right now, these are Stalker calves. We're expecting to purchase them in February. As you can see, they're being purchased in February. We're going to buy them at about 360 pounds. We anticipate paying about $5.23 a pound. And then we plan to sell them in November. We expect that they're going to weigh 770 at that time. We expect the price that we're going to get for them at about $3.70 a pound. But we want to consider making a change. What if we sold them a little bit earlier, a little lighter, to see if we could make that more efficient for this ranch business? So we think we might be able to sell them in October. They're going to be a bit lighter, but that price should also be a little bit higher, the price per pound. So yeah, let's say they're 30 pounds lighter, $740, and let's say we got $390 per pound at that time. And let's see how that impacts the efficiency of that enterprise. So here's that enterprise, and then you can hit the compare feature, and you can see that makes a big difference. That's from $92 per grazing unit month up to $112. That's a $20 per grazing unit month increase in efficiency. For every unit of grass that we consume, that enterprise is now going to produce $20 more. And that's a big difference when you think, this ranch, I think it's using about 3,000 grazing unit months. So if you can increase that by 20, that's 3,000 times 20, that's, over $60,000 increase in gross margin, increase in profit. So that's a big change. One other thing that we notice here, if you look at the cattle breeding herd, we see that those numbers are going down. Now, maybe the producer wants that, but based on what they're doing with their reproductive numbers, their cull numbers, their mortality rates, the number of heifers they're keeping, the number of replacements they're maybe purchasing, everything in the picture, they're going to have to do something different to maintain their current herd numbers. If we look at how many heifers they're keeping right now, their wean percentage, they're keeping like 25% of their heifers. So that's going to have to go up, or they're going to have to purchase more. Let's go look at the replacement cost report. So the replacement cost, this producer right now, it's costing them $31.86.92 to raise the replacements. What are they anticipating buying them for? What's the market showing right now? For those bred heifers, those H2s, they think they can buy them for $3,050. That's a little bit cheaper. So if that's true, they should buy them rather than raise them. Assuming those are comparable females, they should purchase them. That should increase their enterprise efficiency. So let's go ahead and buy some. Why don't we buy 5 and see what that does for our herd numbers moving forward. So now from 90 to 73, still losing a little bit, still need to buy more. Let's go ahead and, why don't we purchase more? Maybe purchase 9, see what that does. So that's what we want to do to maintain our numbers. Let's go back to our enterprise efficiency, see if it did make us a little bit more efficient. And it did. It made us about $1 per grazing unit month more efficient. And again, that's about a $3,000 increase in gross margin, $3,000 increase in gross profit. So that's a good move. So go ahead and go back. Let's go look now at our profit after doing that, after making some changes for enterprise efficiency. And now from 68 to 175 in year 1, year 5, from 70 to 217, that's a tripling of profit in year 5. Okay, let's look at the 4th one. And this is reallocating limited resources, the 4th step in our ranch profit roadmap. And this is often a big one. Simply by identifying what are your better enterprises and moving resources away from your bad enterprises and towards your good enterprises, this can often make a big difference. We look at our grazing demands. Currently, we're using a little over 3,200 grazing unit months. Okay, well, let's go and maybe eliminate some of our poor performers and free up some grass and then reemploy it with our better performers. So we can see here, cow-calf enterprise is good. Acquired stocker enterprise 1 is good. The others really aren't. So let's just eliminate those. Retained heifer stockers, retained steers, acquired stocker 2 and 3. So let's go to management. Let's stop saving those calves. Let's go to those heifer calves and those steer calves. Let's stop saving them. We just sell them at weaning time. Let's not purchase acquired stocker 2 or 3. Let's go 0 those out. We were purchasing 50 each. Okay. Let's do the same thing. Let's look at our sheep enterprises. Yep. So now those enterprises are gone. Let's look at our sheep enterprises. We'll just keep the ewe lamb enterprise for now. Eliminate those ewe and weather feeders. So go there to management for sheep. Eliminate those. Okay, those are gone. Look at our goats. Again, we'll keep the doe kid enterprise, eliminate the doe feeders and weather feeders. Okay, so now how much grass have we used? We can see that, we've dropped our grass use almost 1,000 grazing unit months. We've freed up almost 1,000 grazing unit months. So now we can use that with our better enterprises, and we should make a significant difference in profit. So go to, again, let's take a quick look at the enterprise efficiency. Both our cow-calf enterprise and that acquired stocker 1 enterprise are really excellent enterprises. We could increase either, but just, we could buy more breeding animals and increase our cow-calf, but let's just make it simple for now. For the sake of time, let's just increase our acquired stocker 1s. So let's go and purchase more of those to use that grass, acquired stalker ones. And let's go from, say, 50 to 150, see what that does. Okay, we still have more room. Let's go back and purchase some more. Let's go to 200. Okay, so that's close. Let's just stay there for now. We're under what we were using before. We're using less grass. It's a little conservative, but let's take a look at the difference in profitability. I think you're going to see a big difference here. Again, just using that grass more efficiently. So now year one profit is almost 4 times the profit from what it was under our current plan. By year 5, where's it at? From 70,000 to 276. Again, more than 4 times increase in profit. Okay, let's go to our last step, and that's to further develop our resources. So this ranch has an opportunity to acquire a lease. The lease they expect is going to provide about 1,000 grazing unit months. So it's going to increase our grazing capacity to, about 4,100. It's going to cost 30,000 a year to do that. So let's go do that and see how much more we could make if we were to do that. So go to overheads. Under cash overheads, we're going to add $30,000 for this new grazing lease. And let's go purchase more of those acquired stalker ones. Right now we're buying, what was it, 200? Let's buy 300. See where we're at. And we're still under, our expectation is to have 4,200 available. Let's go ahead and let's increase it to 350. Let's do 375. You see how easy it is to kind of manage in this way once you have this information in. So that's about the same amount of grazing that we were using before, our 3,100 plus, and then adding another 1,000 for this lease. We're at about that same amount of grass consumption. And now let's look at our profit and loss from 68,000 to 326. Now, I think we aren't really doing things all that differently. We're simply doing more of the good things, less of the bad things. We're cutting some dead weight. We're looking at opportunities and options just to make some changes. But it's so much easier once you can see the big picture and you can play with it in this kind of a way. Let's look at our cash flow. Make sure that that's in a good situation, our annual cash flow. So yeah, our annual income is over 1.4 million. This isn't a huge operation. That we have like 90 cows or so, which is our biggest enterprise. Makes a big difference being able to see. So yeah, so once you can see the big picture moving forward and interact with it like this, it's a lot more easy to make massive differences in ranch profitability. And I think it's really not an overstatement to say that ranch managers have really pretty much been forced to operate blind. These things are complicated. There's a lot of different interactions, a lot of different variables, a lot of different intricate relationships. And we're trying to do this on our gut, on a napkin. just our best gut feeling. Ranchers are basically, having to operate blind, putting their head down, working hard, operating on gut feeling, or perhaps doing what other people suggest, or, and hoping at the end of the day that they make some money and can remain in business. But there's just too many moving parts. We just really can't do it very well. And a lot of people, I think, are often shocked when they see this. It almost looks like monopoly money, to have a 40% increase in profit, or even here, like 4 or 5 times profit increase. It sounds a bit crazy, but really it's the difference between driving blindfolded or taking that blindfold off. Clearly we can do tremendously better if we simply are able to see. And that's what this allows you to do. It allows you to see forward. It allows you to then interact, and for your unique ranch business to make a plan that can maximize, get the most for what you have, for your situation. So it simply just allows you to see better. And that's pretty much it, I guess. I'm happy to answer any questions, or
Yeah, let's open it up for some discussion here, Dr. Brazil. But thank you very much. This is a awesome presentation. We appreciate you sharing this. We're going to talk more about the regenerative side, but the thing that I find is always lacking is the financial side. I mean, and it's the thing that's maybe not as fun to do, and I get it. Like, we'd a lot rather go out and move cows and build fence and do that stuff, but if we don't do this, we can't do that. So I appreciate that you put so much time and effort into creating something that really works. So somebody asked the question, and probably other people are wondering this too, but does this integrate with QuickBooks or Ambrook or Xero or other accounting software?
Yeah. Right now we don't. They serve very different purposes. So basically, these bookkeeping type programs, they're helping you to manage the money you've made, right? You got to pay taxes on it. You have to do certain things like that. This program is different. It's about looking forward and helping you to make more. So it's kind of a different function, a complementary function. But because what you're putting in is your current situation, like how many, Michaela, why don't you show some of the inputs, right? We're asking you some questions. Look at the inventory. We're asking you how many animals you currently have. We're also asking you your expectations. What do you expect your mortality rates to be? What do you expect your reproductive numbers to be? What do you plan to do in this situation or that situation? What do you expect your prices to be? So because we're looking at expectations, you're not locked into what happened in the past. That's helpful information. That's going to be helpful to identify our expectations. But maybe last year was a bad year, or a good year, or things change. You think of how much things have changed over the last few years, right? Inflation 4 years ago was 9%. Now it's like 2.5%. Cattle markets changed tremendously, over the last few years. Even over the last 8 months, it's changed tremendously. So you're not locked into what happened before. So keeping records is helpful. It serves a purpose, but we're not really asking you that. You're putting your best expectation for what you think is going to happen in the months coming forward, and then it analyzes that. So you're not locked into it. So yeah, kind of a different function, helping you to become more profitable. And then, hey, use QuickBooks, use Ambrook or whatever to deal with the money you made. Hopefully you make a lot more money and have that to deal with. This is helping you specifically to be more profitable.
Yep. And it seems like it's an extra step, which it is, but it's a lot better than trying to do it by hand or with spreadsheets, because just as you've seen, you can run scenarios very quickly, instead of going back and using the pencil and eraser and wearing out the eraser trying to go back and run a scenario B when you get down the road and figure out that doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, literally, these equations are pretty massive. You could do this by hand, but yeah, it's going to take you weeks to do one thing, and then you make one change and you got to recalculate everything. Take you weeks to get another answer. So this is kind of harnessing the power of computing. You just put in the number, it crunches it, instantly updates everything, and allows you to do this much, much more quickly.
Yeah. Caesar was asking, is there an AI integration or component, or how is AI used within Branch Vision?
Yeah, we do have a chat bot that does help bring in information, so that there's some AI there that allows you to ask questions about things, about the program, about anything else. So that, provides you with information. It kind of continues to grow as people use it and ask questions. It has more and more resources. We're looking to incorporate some AI in the future, but we don't have more than that right now.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So the actual computation is done outside of AI, and
Yes,
it would be
yes,
similar to.
it's it's simple math. It's a linear equation, so it's simple math, not relying on AI. And again, yeah, your inputs, we leave the user complete freedom to put what they expect for their prices in their location, their situation, all these different things. We leave the user with their own, to use whatever they want to put their freedom. We do provide tools like, we link them to market reports for the US, for Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. Most recent for the US, it's USDA market reports. This is from a couple days ago for this location, for this user, because they put in where they're from. So we do provide resources to help them, but we allow the user to have absolute freedom. We don't dictate what's going to happen for them. We let them analyze whatever they want.
Yeah, that's cool. So Michaela or Keely, if you guys can think of like a case study or somebody that I'll give you a minute to think about that, or with their permission, or just say Joe Blow was a user and this is what they were able to accomplish. That would be great. There's a couple other just quick questions here that have come up. Will it work for a dairy?
Yeah, it can work for a dairy, but it's more, it can work for a dairy. You have to be a little creative with it. So the dairy aspect of the business would be like another ranch enterprise. It would be entered in as an other ranch enterprise. And then the modeling for the population modeling for the cattle reproduction and breeding and the numbers moving forward, that would be put into, yeah, just like it is normally for beef cattle.
We did work with a user that had a dairy operation and they actually sold their old dairy cows as hamburger. So there was kind of a hybrid approach there where they're able to use some of the modeling based on grazing and forage demands, and then also include the product of the dairy, which would be the milk, as an additional ranch enterprise. So there's a workaround. Like Dr. Brazil said, the software is left pretty flexible, so we can usually figure out a way to accommodate the different factors on different ranch businesses because there are so many unique ranch structures. There really is no one size fits all approach. So we can get creative for sure, but it's not the primary focus of the program. The primary focus is grazing livestock enterprises.
So if it's a grass-based dairy though, does that make a
Mhm.
difference? Like if they're not importing feed, like they're a grazing dairy?
Yeah, if it's a grass based, then it's easier. Again, you just put your numbers in there. If it's non-grass, like a feedlot dairy, it's going to be completely an additional ranch enterprise, and all of your gross product, which is going to include, your milk sales and everything, and your direct costs, which is going to include, your milk processing, shipping, marketing. Those would be included. So yeah, you can use it, and that adds it to the whole picture. You can have any number of other ranch enterprises. It's going to incorporate those to the whole ranch picture. It's going to add them to those different grazing livestock enterprises. And when you see your ranch profit, your cash flow and everything, it's all going to be incorporated together so you can see the whole ranch business picture moving forward.
Okay. What about a farming enterprise? Or if you are a straight up farmer and you don't have livestock,
Yeah.
would this be a tool that would help somebody in that situation?
Yeah. It's going to be more beneficial You could, you can use it, and again, that would be added as an other ranch enterprise, whatever ones they might have. But what's really powerful is the modeling, the population modeling of numbers, because when you have livestock, that's one of the complicated things. You have these dynamic populations where animals are being born and dying and being sold and going through developmental stages and all that. That's what's really powerful about this is it tells you, hey, if you can tell me your conception rates, if you can tell me your mortality rates and your numbers, it'll tell you how many of each type of animal you're going to have this year, next year, and on into the future. So if you're doing farming, it's not as beneficial to you as if you were, using it for grazing enterprises.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you have grazing enterprises and also have farming, then it incorporates all that into the big picture and would be very, very useful.
Okay. Yeah.
Back to your question, Jared, if you want to go over kind of a case study.
Yeah. Yeah. If you've got
Yeah.
somebody in mind or just in general, like.
Totally. Yeah, so we have a couple of videos on our YouTube channel that are helpful because oftentimes we'll record an onboarding with a user and kind of go over their unique ranch situation. So users can see different situations with Dr. Brazil advising how to use the software. So just thinking about, we'll just call them the Smiths in Montana, Dr. Brazil, and how they evaluated the lease they were running, the paid lease that they were running versus their own cow-calf operation. I think that one's pretty good. We can also maybe Keely, you could grab the link to that and post it in the chat if folks want to watch that. But maybe you, Dr. Brazil, you could just give a quick overview of how use enterprise efficiency primarily to really transform or show a path to transform that operation pretty recently.
Yeah, there's a few others. Maybe Keely can put up several other, real users using the program, making quite a big difference. That operation they had, if I remember right, they had a cow-calf enterprise, fairly small. They also did a joint enterprise with their family. They were trading some things, trading grazing for use of a tractor, a few other things. And they also were leasing out ground, getting paid per animal unit for like 1,000 steers to run, 1,000 stalker steers to run. We analyzed all those different things, comparing, hey, how much are you making leasing out that grass? Did an enterprise efficiency on that? Did enterprise efficiencies on the joint use? Did enterprise efficiency on what they were doing? And it made a massive difference. I think and everybody's different and everybody has different comforts with things like risk and debt and things like that. But within their comfort zone, we were able to take them from like $17,000 or $18,000 a year gross profit to over 400,000. So they could have done more, but purchasing those breeding animals to increase their cow-calf enterprise, started to get a little uncomfortable, which is understandable. And they decided, hey, let's just start here, and made a tremendous difference. And there's a number of others. And like Michaela said, everybody's different. People do things in different ways. Everybody has different opportunities, different risks. You have to be creative and think outside the box and say, hey, what if I did this? And what if I tried that? There's a lot of neat things. I think we had another producer who doesn't like making hay and thinks it's maybe inefficient, and like, hey, what could we do if we didn't put up hay? And I think often it is inefficient, by the way, for a lot of people. What if we didn't put up hay, but we use that ground? We could increase our cow-calf enterprise. We'd have to purchase hay, do things differently, but we could change our numbers. Again, that was a tremendous difference on that operation. Maybe another operation, they're maybe more profitable to raise hay. It just depends how everybody does things. So you need to get your own numbers in here to see what you're doing, what's happening in your situation, and then you can have a rational approach to manage and then make some significant changes.
Love it. Yeah, that's good. I think, Keely, you might have addressed that that this does not replace the stewardship. It doesn't replace the experience. Just because it says, the program says that it'll work. from one year to the next, your carrying capacity is going to change, or there's going to be some event, fire, flood, drought, heavy snow like we had this morning at our place. It's gonna change the system. So you definitely need to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening. And so another question for you, Dr. Brazil, is see if this, I'd love to hear your input. You know, we're always trying to define what regenerative means. And one of the definitions that I believe goes into that is that somebody who produces regeneratively, or a regenerative steward, is consistently increasing the carrying capacity of the land that they steward. Every year there's going to be some variation because of drought or whatever, lack of rainfall, right? But the trend is always going to be increasing that ranch's carrying capacity. And Tony Malmberg said that that is the one indicator that he used to measure to determine whether a ranch was going to be regenerative and long-term sustainable, meaning it's going to be around for generations, is that they're not necessarily expanding horizontally by leasing more land or buying more land. They're improving the capacity of the land that they own. Now, I'd love to get your take on that. That's a given that your enterprises have a positive margin, right? Because the simple fact of running more of an enterprise that has a negative margin, you're just going to go broke faster.
Yeah, right.
But what if you could only measure one thing, or I guess first speak to that question. Do you concur with that, or maybe can add any more context around
that makes
thought?
Yeah, I like that. You know, obviously there's going to be fluctuations, right? Year to year fluctuations, because you can't control, you know, rainfall, sunshine, precipitation patterns. Those are going to vary, but you know, a general, you know, increasing trend towards your soils being more productive. That's kind of the ultimate bottom line measurement, that they're able to produce more, they're able to carry more. Yeah.
What are the other things that you see the commonalities between the break even, or the ranchers that operate in the negative, and those that are profitable?
Yeah, there's so much difference, you know, so much variability. You know, I think the main difference is being willing to take some time and think it through. You know, ranchers are hardworking people, and you know, often they'll work for a day to, you know, chisel through stony ground to put in one corner fence post, you know, but boy, they don't want to spend an hour or two to figure out what they're going to do for the next few years, right? You need to have, I think, just that discipline to say, okay, I don't like this maybe, but this is so important. I got to sit down. I have to make a plan. I have to look at these things, and then I can go back to doing what I like to do and maybe enjoy more. But, you know, those will be the most profitable hours you'll ever spend, just a few hours of figuring things out. And I like what you said also, you know, the program will never replace the person. You know, it does and harnesses what computers can do, which is that, you know, instantaneous computing capacity, but it's never going to replace the creativity of people. It's never going to replace human experience to say, you know, this is something I couldn't do, but this is something I could do. It's never going to replace judgment. You need those things. So it can work in tandem with you as you apply creativity, experience, judgment to say, what if I tried this? What if I tried that? And it'll say, well, if you did this, this is what's going to happen. And you go, okay, that looks good. Can we develop that more? Or that looks bad. Maybe that's not worth my time. Let's consider something else. So I think we'll never be able to get away from that human element, that hands-on, you know, stewardship concept, right, of taking responsibility and taking care of what's in front of you. But that does require some planning and some thinking, and just that input time. I think that makes the biggest difference between those who are, you know, can stay in it long term successfully, and those who, you know, just fall out, and lots of people fall out.